Good evening, everyone. Hopefully everyone got to enjoy some sunshine today. Um, my name is Heather Blakeman. I'm an AmeriCorps member serving with Chagrin River Watershed Partners. And today we have Linda Gilbert, naturalist with the Geauga Park District with us. Just a reminder, this is being recorded and will be available for viewing probably tomorrow evening at the latest. And then also, if you have any questions, if you can put them in the little question area, and we will be having a Q&A at the end of this presentation. So you can go ahead and Linda, and take it away.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Happy to be with you tonight for this little presentation on research in our parks. So I'm a naturalist, but also have the, every once in a while, I'm allowed to sort of cross over into the natural resource management department area and help out our park biologist with surveys and things like that help him when he writes management plans, and it sort of helps guide how those management plans work out, especially for parks that are being developed or parks that have critical species in them and things like that. So anyway, I'm just going to give you an overview of some of the things that I've been involved with this past year in 2022 with some of the survey work that I've done and some of the interesting critters and things that that I saw along the way. So anyway, we're going to start off with, and now let's see, what do I have to do to advance my screen here? Hold on a minute. This is a new format for me.
You also just advanced.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So usually tapping your mouse.
Okay. So it should say noteworthy Geauga dragons, I hope.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So since dragonflies and damselflies are my thing, we're starting off with noteworthy dragonflies and damselflies that I came across doing some of my survey work in our parks. So so I'm going to try and click the mouse here again. I don't know, there's a delay on my end. There we go. Okay. So these two dragonflies right here are sort of unique. The one on the left, the river cruiser there, it's a hybrid river cruiser, which is actually a cross with the gilded river cruiser and the royal river cruiser. So in Geauga County, the royal river cruiser is our normal river loving dragon. But this particular one does not fit the characteristics totally of a royal river cruiser. There's some physiologic differences on it, and so it had formerly been its own species called a Wabash river cruiser, which I think it should still be its own species because we don't have the other half of the hybrid in Geauga County. We do not have gilded river cruisers in Geauga County. They're more of a western species in Ohio. So how can you have the hybrid if you don't have one of the parties that makes up the hybrid? So I don't know, these scientists have to debate this stuff and maybe do some genetics on it, but I think it should be its own species. But anyway, I'm calling it for right now hybrid river cruiser because I really don't know. And apparently nobody else does either. So hopefully one of these days they'll get that settled. So anyway, but it's a really handsome critter, big dragonfly, and characterized by that one diagonal yellow thoracic stripe, and then these brilliant green eyes, and then it's got some markings on the dorsal surface of the abdomen. So it's a nice big dragonfly if you get to see him. Kayak at Russell Park, and in the summer you'll see him cruising up and down the river. This one I actually found at Welton's Gorge, which is not far from the Cuyahoga River. And so sometimes when they're not cruising along there in the sort of swamp forest edges, and they can be hanging out. This one was along the trail at Welton's Gorge. So anyway, and then the one on the right, the stream cruiser, this was a county record Dragonfly for last year that I did not find. I was just a little bit annoyed, especially since I live here in Geauga County. So any county records, you know, I want to be mine, but I wasn't as lucky with this one. If you don't, you know, get the picture of it, you don't get the credit. Anyway, stream cruiser was found by somebody visiting our park at Veterans Legacy Woods. And so that is now an official county record Dragonfly for our county. And again, it's not very common. I saw this one on my property one time, a long time ago, had no camera, no net, no way to even, you know, get a picture of it. I was lucky to even just see the thing. So anyway, but it's official now. So there it is. All right, let's move on. All right, yay, I finally saw this one. This is the Spangled Skimmer. 2 years ago at Burton Wetlands, somebody saw this for a county record. And I was annoyed again because I visit Burton Wetlands all the time. I do a butterfly survey there. So when I'm walking my route, I'm also paying attention to other stuff too. Never saw the Spangled Skimmer until this past summer. I saw one individual. I was able to get a picture of it, so I was finally thrilled to have seen this critter at Burton Wetlands. So I don't know if this species is going to establish a population at Burton Wetlands. The previous 2 years, only one individual was seen on a particular day when somebody was there. So it's more of a southern dragonfly, so counties south of us, Portage, Summit, and farther south in Ohio, this species is a little bit more common there. So I don't know if the climate's changing, maybe it's going to come up here and establish a population in Geauga County. So we'll see what the future brings. This dragonfly is also real similar to another one that looks almost similar to it, the slaty skimmer. And but the way you tell is to look at the tips of the wings. So there's a black and white, that part of the wing is called the stigma. And so when this critter is hovering and those little black and white wing stigmas are flashing, that's how it got its name Spangled. I mean, it's got some bling up there on the tips of its wings. If you look at the same area on the slaty skimmer, so I don't know if you can see my cursor over here at the wing tips, this is all black. So that's one way of distinguishing the two. So be interesting to see what happens at Burton Wetlands. I'll be starting to visit there soon because butterfly surveys start in April. So I'll be keeping an eye out on the dragons as well. This next one, we got a new location this past year for this species. And so the Harlequin Darner is a threatened species in Ohio. It's habitat specific, so it sort of likes boggy wetlands. And so it's a pretty tame critter. So the upper right picture, the thing flew up and landed on my pant leg. And it was too close for me to almost even get a shot of it. But they will, for whatever reason, come up and land on you, which is bad for a threatened thing. They should not be able to do that. That makes, you know, they're too easy to catch that way. So it always amuses me that these, you know, rare species come up and land on you. So anyway, then there's the picture of the Harlequin Darner in flight. And then when they land on a tree trunk, they're pretty much invisible. I just happened to see where that one landed after it flew past me. So, but talk about great camouflage. This is probably one of our smaller darners, and its genus and species name combine the species name for clubtails, the genus name rather, sorry, for clubtails, which is Gompus, and the genus name for darners, which is Eschna. So Gomph Eschna is its genus name, and this does have characteristics of both of those dragonfly genus. So you know, clubtails sort of have this undulating sort of up and down flight. This critter will do that too. So that's not typical behavior for darners, but so anyway, some of the behaviors that both of those dragonfly genus have are sort of combined into this critter. So it's a nice one to find. I even had one in my yard one year. Again, it landed on me, and so we have maybe 10 locations in Geauga County where we've recorded this species, and the majority of them have been in our parks. So I think it's pretty cool. Always happy to see a Harlequin Darner. All right, moving on. The spot-winged glider is a the less common of the two species that we have in Ohio, named for the spot on the lower hind wing, and is in the same genus as the more common wandering glider, which is that bright gold one with the sort of red eyes that you may see flying around parking lots and trying to lay eggs on cars. Don't ask me why. But anyway, the gliders are a family of dragonflies that can be migratory, especially the wandering glider actually migrates in, I think, up and down the coast of Africa when the monsoons come. They make some really big migrations. So some of the dragonflies are migratory as well. The spot-wing glider, though, it was amazing that I even caught this thing. I made a very ungraceful swing with it with my net, and somehow it ended up in the net, and I was able to get in the hand shots. So that was really cool. And that was at Orchard Hills. We were having a field day with our naturalist department there. So was thrilled that it was a spot-wing glider to show everybody. Here's another listed species. Unfortunately, this was just listed as threatened in 2020, unfortunately. There's maybe 2 places in Geauga County where it occurs. It's a little bit more common in Ashtabula County at that North Kingsville Sand Baron area. I think that's a museum property, that there's a population up there, but in Geauga County, they're pretty sparse. This is what we call a teneral dragonfly at stage of life, when it just recently has emerged from its aquatic stage, and its wings are still a little bit shiny and they're soft. Notice that it's not holding its wings out to the side because this is just recently newly emerged. And so I was careful to not touch its wings because you can actually squish them together and they stick together, and then the critter can't fly. So anyway, but these are habitat sort of specific critters too. They like sort of skunk cabbage seep areas and woodlands, and so so I'm always thrilled whenever I find this one, because, and I never see many of them. I see like 1 or 2, and so they're not very common here, and unfortunately now are listed. And there's the range map of where they occur. These maps were just recently updated, so it shows pretty much the current distribution of where this critter is. Northeast Ohio. It's because we've got the habitat that it needs up here. Here's a nice red one with a bright white face that's hard to miss. The white face, that is. We have 3 or 4 species that are red that can be confusing, but not this one because of that bright white face. So the other 2 that are it might likely be confused with are the autumn meadowhawk and the ruby meadowhawk. They all sort of have overlapping flight periods, so that sort of makes it confusing as well. But you can't miss that white face. And so this one, let's see, I've seen it at Froring Meadows. I've seen it at Burton Wetlands. It's sort of like wetlands that have like a lot of sedges and rushes and things like that. So, so look for it during the summer, usually July-ish or so, starting in there. Start looking for that one. And here is my Nemesis Dragon, the gray petal tail. Larry Roche, my dragon flying colleague, and probably one of the best dragon flyers in Ohio, actually. He's like, oh yeah, gray petal tails, they'll come up again, they'll land on you. Well, I am still waiting. And in fact, I've never really gotten a very good look at this critter at all. I mean, I've seen them fly by me, but that doesn't, I mean, you can't get a sense of the critter. It needs to like sit so that you can observe it. So the story behind this one was we were doing, my coworkers and I were doing a hike for the public at the closed landfill in Lake County. And so, which is sort of like behind Orchard Hills Park. And so there's this long driveway that you have to drive down before you get to the closed landfill part. It's all covered over now with dirt. It's not an active site anymore. But anyway, we're driving down the driveway and I see this big dragon fly past the car and land on the road ahead. I'm like, stop, stop. So I get out the binoculars and I'm looking and I'm like, it looks like, I don't know, it looks like it might be some darner. And so I said, I got to get out of the car. I had my camera, so I got out of the car and I'm click, 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 and I'm trying to walk closer, clicking away. And then I took like one more step and off it flew. And I didn't see it again after that. So I get back in the car. I'm looking at my camera pictures and I'm zooming the thing in and I'm like, gray petal tail. What the heck? So I was like, it was a gray petal tail. And then the next question was, what county was it in? So the Lake County closed landfill, part of it's in Geauga and part of it is in Lake County, but I didn't know where the county line was until after I got back to work. I got out Google Earth, looked at it, and the very end of the long driveway where the gate is into the actual landfill part, the entire driveway is in Geauga County. So I got my Geauga County gray petal tail for a change. I mean, this is not the greatest picture, but at least it was, you know, I could identify it. So this has been my only good like view of it so far. I'm still hoping that one will come and land on me sometime. Again, though, it's a habitat specific type of critter. It likes forested ravine seeps. And the nymph of this critter, folks, some of the Odonata people think is semi-terrestrial, so it may not be living like underwater in a stream, but it might be living between the leaf litter in a seep area that's coming out of the side of a ravine. So that's its specific habitat, and that kind of habitat does exist in the area around Orchard Hills and the landfill. So anyway, there it is, the gray petal tail. Yay, finally got to get somewhat of a good look at it. And here's one of my favorite damselflies. This is the rainbow bluet. The really only reliable population of this species near us is in Ashtabula County. I think there's like, it's Rock Creek or something. There's like a little public park along the creek, and I remember going there one time, and these little damselflies fly along the edge of that creek. Well, we have now a location in Geauga County where this species seems to be maintaining a population there. And so it's on a park preserve area, and it was under restoration, and I was worried that it might disappear because of construction that was happening at that site. But I'm happy to say that in the couple years since that restoration, this critter is still hanging on. So we do have a population of this beautiful little species in Geauga County. So it may or may not be doing very well in Ohio. So here's the map, and the darkest counties are the ones with the most current records. So look at all of the places where it had been that haven't had a record of it in quite a while. So the status of this one, some of the Odonata people are not sure really how it's doing. It may be holding its own, it may be slightly declining, but I don't know. But hopefully in Geauga County, this population will maintain and be successful for many, many years. Here is our lily pad forktail. This one has been downlisted from endangered to a species of concern. Here's the range map. It was first discovered up there in the corner of Ohio in Williams County. And then there was a sighting, I think it was Richland, actually the next one that happened like 20 years later or some ridiculous amount of time. But then it started popping up in other counties. And so we got our Geauga County record was, I think, in 2016. And I actually did get that. I saw it at Burton Wetlands. It flies at Burton Wetlands. And so it was a county record for us that year. So happy to say that this one has been downlisted. Typical behavior, though, look at its posture. You know, damselflies are small. Most of them are like maybe if they're an inch, you know, you're lucky. But it almost always perches on the surface of like a lily pad leaf with the tip of its abdomen touching the lily pad and its two front legs in the air. They sort of look like little tripods when they perch on the lily leaves. So it's got a very distinctive posture that I can almost tell instantly just by looking at the way it's sitting on a leaf that what species it is. The females come in two color varieties. There's the orange form, and then there's sort of the white form. I can't remember if the orange stays orange for all of its life or if it does turn that powdery white as it ages. So anyway, there can be the orange form female or the sort of bluish form female. And sometimes you can see them both together, both forms together out there. All right, so we're going to leave the dragons behind and talk about the Beaver Creek breeding bird survey, or I should say resurvey, that I did this past spring, summer. This is an area that needed to be restored because it was full of that nasty, the canary grass, reed canary grass. All that useless invasive grass filled this sort of floodplain area there. And so our park biologists wanted a breeding bird survey done before the restoration, which we did. And then I did it last year after the restoration was complete, just so that we could sort of compare the results from before and after. So this is what part of the site looked like after the restoration. This was near my second count point. We do point count surveys for this particular survey. And so they did a whole bunch of rerouting the stream, and they made some vernal pools. And so now the area acts like a floodplain should. And so this vegetation, after it grows in, should be a pretty nice area once it's really fully, leafed out. So this is our protocol that we use. And So 1 minute of when you get to your count point, you wait a minute just for let everything sort of settle back down. Then you do 6 minutes of listening and watching and making a species list of what you either see or hear. Then 2 minutes of the screech owl mobbing recording, which I don't know. I'm going to try and play this, so I don't know if it's going to come through. We'll see. Either maybe you can tell me if it's playing. Anyway, so this was a
I heard it.
okay, good. So I'll just move along here. So anyway, that mobbing call oftentimes will attract the attention of other birds and stuff in the area. So then play that for 2 minutes, and then turn it off, and then you wait 2 more minutes to see what got stirred up by the the mobbing calls, and then write down any additional species that you didn't see before you played the recorded call. So then when you make your species list, you assign a breeding bird code based on the behavior that you see. And of course, what we're trying to do is have confirmed status of nesting for whatever species you see. So you have to, see a bird that's carrying food or feeding a baby or building a nest or taking a fecal sack away from the nest or, things like that. So you put a code on the behaviors that you see and hope to confirm as many species as possible for that particular area. So this was one of the species that I saw there during the survey, a spotted sandpiper. And it was interesting because I was reading, there was a 2022 State of the Birds report that came out. And unfortunately, shorebirds have had very, very steep declines in their populations over the last like 3 decades or so. And some of the species have lost like 70% of their populations over like since 1980. And so, but fortunately, the spotted sandpiper is not one of those. And the Breeding Bird Atlas for Ohio does suggest that there are some declining trends, but I was thrilled to see this at the restoration site, which I'm sure it would not have been there if that site hadn't been worked on. And so anyway, the nice thing about it was that I was able to see one of these. They had little babies. I saw 2 of them there. And so the only other place that I think I remember having spotted sandpiper breeding was at Froing Meadows. One of my friend and colleague had pictures of an adult with babies at Froing Meadows. And so now we have another site where we have adults with babies. So anyway, the next slide is a video. I hope it'll come through here. So anyway, there's mom. Although it might be dad, I think with shorebirds, sometimes the dads take over the raising of the babies. So maybe this could be dad as well. And there's one of the little ones, bobbing its tail, just like mom and dad. So here's the adult on the left and one of the little babies on the right. And then you have to look quick here. See, there's one baby going behind, and there comes the other one, but 1, 2. But oh gosh, I don't know. Baby shorebirds are so absolutely adorable. So this is the first time that I've been able to see baby spotted sandpipers. So I was thrilled when I saw these couple little ones. So that was nice. So anyway, so here were the survey results from 2000, which was the first year we did it, and then again last year. So, you know, about the same. A few more probable breeders in some of these categories. So hopefully over time, you know, we maintain at least most of these species that are there. So these are the list of species that we confirmed breeding for both years of the survey, and it was the redwing and the song sparrow that we had both years there. So my suggestion to our park biologist is that we repeat this survey in like 5 years and see if there's any differences in, you know, what we saw from the first couple years of after that restoration. So I made a big list of all of the species that we saw in both years, and you can see the percentage breakdowns there of confirmed, probable, possible, and observed. An observed species, by the way, is a bird whose nesting success is dependent on a different habitat type. So, you know, birds that fly over, like turkey vultures, probably are not going to nest in this area. So that's an example of an observed bird. So 70-some% either confirmed or probable breeders, so that's pretty good. So anyway, in 5 years, it will be interesting to see what the changes are, if any. So some other noteworthy birds that we bumped into in 2022. This one, actually, we did a BioBlitz Observatory Park in last June, and one of the participants found a nest site active, adults feeding young, and since that's an Ohio listed species, it's always nice to confirm that bird is breeding in one of our parks. Here's the black-billed cuckoo. Oops, sorry. Let me jump back here. Sorry. So this is one that I've seen cuckoos a handful of times. I mean, I can count on one time. They're very secretive birds. This one was at, this picture is not from Burton Wetlands, but the one that I saw at Burton Wetlands, I heard it. I was doing my butterfly survey. I heard it. I was down by the observation deck. I'm like, where is this? I'm hearing this bird somewhere close by, and it's in a tree just right by the observation deck there. And so good heavens, I mean, for all the times that I don't get to see these because they're so secretive. So that was a good sighting. So black-billed cuckoo, and of course the other species that we have in Geauga County is the yellow-billed cuckoo. Red-breasted nuthatches are, so what is this? I think it's a species of concern. It's hiding behind this little menu thing here on my, special interest. And in 2022, the person that does the Finch forecast report for the winter predicted that this would be an eruptive species. That's one of those bird species whose numbers increase into our area in certain times during the winter, but in other years are absent. And so the red-breasted nuthatch was one of those species. I did have a pair in my backyard. We had them at Swine Creek, and so maybe you had them last year at your feeder too. But it's always nice to see. It's such a cute little bird, red-breasted nuthatches. All right, next. Hello. There we go. There was a park visitor to Orchard Hills. One of our local birders observed a northern harrier at Orchard Hills Park. They're uncommon migrants in our area. Sometimes they might stay the winter, but they're kind of rare winter residents. This particular bird is a juvenile bird. This was not the bird that was seen at Orchard Hills, but I put it in there so that you know what it looks like. Notice it has a very owl-like face, and look for its typical behavior of flying low over fields and looking down. The next slide is another little video that I took at Froring Meadows several years ago. And so you can sort of get a sense of its hunting behavior in this next slide. Sorry, the video is so shaky. My camera at the time, I was lucky to even get this much. You can see the white rump patch on his butt there. But they just fly like right over the tops of the vegetation, usually normally looking down. So always nice when you can get an endangered species in one of our parks. All right, so moving along to butterfly surveys. I do 2 transects, one at Froring Meadows and one at Burton Wetlands. And so these next slides are some of the species statistics that we've tallied at those parks last year. So species status. So the individuals per year, I think most people know that insects are not doing so well in the world, and our species per year status kind of shows that downward trend. When you see these little line charts, you're going to see that the Burton Wetlands data, there's 3 or so years that have 0 data showing. That's because we are missing data for those years. I think my coworker who did the Burton Wetlands transect turned in the data to the Ohio Lepidopterist, but did not make a copy for our files, or at least I can't find them. So there, you're going to see some zeros on the chart for that. So sorry about that. I've got emails into the Cleveland Museum of Natural History because they get that data as well. I'm thinking, you know, can you find that and send me the things so that I can update our files? So anyhow, here's a look at the species per year at each park, which basically is held pretty much steady over time. It goes up and down a few species each year, but that's I'm happy to see sort of a, you know, a level line there. Right. Every year of the survey, there's always 3 species that are always the most abundant. And so first one is the Cabbage White, which according to a report that was done in 2019, several authors rather, did a paper on butterfly status and used data from Ohio Lepidopterist long-term monitoring project. That's what these surveys are. So maybe they used some of our Geauga County data, I don't know, but they certainly most likely did from Ohio. And anyway, you know, their data shows that these species are in decline, and sure enough, our Froring and Burton Wetlands data sort of show that same thing, reflect that same thing. And so it's sort of disconcerting, I guess, when even these most common species are on the decline. And it's not only in our parks. I've heard this from other folks that are doing butterfly transects in some of Lake County parks, that overall species numbers have been down. The pearl crescent is always one of the most abundant that we see. Luckily, it is holding its own, and our data also reflects the data from that 20-year study that was published in 2019 that also showed that pearl crescents were holding their own. So this is the butterfly that some people think is a baby monarch, but I hope we all know that baby butterflies are really caterpillars. So little orange butterflies are not going to grow up into bigger orange butterflies. But I've had people say, oh yeah, I saw a baby monarch. I'm like, no, it was probably a pearl crescent. So anyway, so those are abundant usually during the summer. They have multiple generations, so you can, see them pretty much every month during the summer at some point, though they do have, broods that sometimes they're really abundant, and then there's sort of a lull, and then they're really abundant again. So it all depends on how the broods work. This year at Frohring, one of the most abundant species was actually the tiger swallowtail. I couldn't believe it. But I heard from lots of people that they were seeing tiger swallowtails every year. So it seems, at least for this year, they had a good year, at least at Frohring. They, are sort of a woodland butterfly. You can find them in woodlands as well as old fields and clover fields and alfalfa, and then of course in your yard and around your garden as well. So we had a good year. They had a good year last year. And then another abundant species that's usually in the top 3 is the clouded sulfur. It too is on the decline. Again, this is a butterfly that likes those open pastures with fields. They also find them along roadsides and things, and of course, maybe in your yard, around your garden, if you have nectar sources for them. And again, they will be on the wing from spring through summer. And in fact, one of their host plants is red clover, white clover, and other members of the legume family. And this is one of the butterflies that has been recorded in all 88 counties in Ohio. So anyway, but again, I hate to see them in decline. Here's our monarch fooler. This is the one that fools people. And of course, the main difference between the monarch and the viceroy is that black line in the lower hind wing, which the viceroy has, and the monarch does not. They had a pretty good year at both parks this year. And so that's always nice to see. I saw had good numbers of them at both parks. And there's their life cycle. The caterpillar looks like a bird dropping, and even the chrysalis looks like a bird dropping. So they're pretty well camouflaged and guarded against, predators wanting to eat something that looks like some bird poop. So this is the little least skipper. This is a minuscule butterfly. Oh my gosh. So maybe even smaller than a dime. It's tiny. It's actually a wetland butterfly, likes wetland areas, but you can find it, maybe along, ditches along the edge of a road, or the vegetation at the edge of a pond or a stream. And but it's just the cutest little thing. But if you ever see one in person, it's amazing. Every time I see one, I just can't believe how small it is. So this little container that it's in maybe has a 1-inch, diameter opening. It's a little vial that I carry with me that I can photograph things in if I need to. And so there, it almost takes up less than half of the diameter of that vial. And here's our Monarch Statistics again, down. 2022 was another down year, although I think now that the Monarch Statistics, the overwintering population results are out, that it was up a little bit, but that's not reflected in the numbers that we had at our parks at either Burton Wetlands or at Frohring Meadows. This one, the Variegated Fritillary, is almost looks like it's more recognizable mem member of this group of butterflies, the great Spangled Fritillary. This one though is smaller. It's a rare immigrant into our area. It's mostly more of a southern species that occasionally wanders into Ohio. Again, it likes old pastures and fields and kind of waste areas. And so it's always nice when it makes an appearance in one of our parks. And so Burton Wetlands had, I think I saw, what, 2 there on our survey this past summer. And here is another visitor into our area. Again, this is more southern in Ohio and west, like southwestern Ohio. Not often encountered in the northeast part of the state, but occasionally will wander into this area. Sometimes it might establish a population here, but again, it's very small, and always happy when I find this one. I don't know if it's a sign of changing climate. I have had this one in the past at Froing Meadows. You can see there's like 15 or some individuals, or 20 individuals or so that we saw around 2012. And then there's little bumps in the years that follow. I did actually have one though at Burton Wetlands this year too. So anyway, its host plant, they're not sure what it is, but some think that it might be partridge pea. And we have partridge pea growing at Froing Meadows. I don't know if we have any at Burton Wetlands, but anyway, I saw them there. So hopefully, maybe sometime they'll establish a population here. Again, this will be something that we should keep our eyeball on to see if that happens or not. Did I miss one? Wait. What happened to my black swallowtail? Wait, little sulfur. Okay, well, anyway, let's talk about the West Virginia white. So there are some citizen science projects that some of the park volunteers do, and the West Virginia white surveys are one of those that I have a group of volunteers that go out to various parks to survey for this little white butterfly. It's a woodland butterfly. You're not going to find it, you know, flying in open places very much, at least not out across a meadow or something. This is usually in a woodland. They fly like, 3 or so feet above the forest floor, and they like to nectar on spring beauties and cutleaf toothwort. Their host plant is two-leaved toothwort, and this butterfly is in decline as well because of habitat loss, especially fragmentation. So they're not going to fly across a fragmented habitat. They are woodland butterflies. And so when you chop up little forests into little pieces, that makes it harder for this butterfly to live in forested areas. And then the other problem is that nasty plant called garlic mustard. Occasionally, West Virginia whites will lay their eggs on garlic mustard. And then when the little caterpillars hatch and eat the leaves, the toxins in the plant kill the caterpillars. So another good reason to get rid of garlic mustard if you have it growing somewhere nearby you. So here's the results of our survey from the parks where volunteers were looking. Swine Creek has always been our best park. In the valley behind the lodge, the trail that goes along the creek, there's abundant two-leaf toothwort down there. There's not very much garlic mustard, and we have good results there every year for West Virginia whites. Clarendon Woodlands was a surprise. Last year was the first year that we did that park, and the volunteer that did that had 12 butterflies in the course. Usually April is and part of May. are the only months that this butterfly is going to be on the wing. And so we're pleased to do that. So I'll be anxious to see what he comes up with this year at Clarendon Woodlands. We struck out at Holbrook Hollows. We struck out at Metzenbaum Park. I'm not going to have the volunteers repeat that. We're going to add Beartown Lakes and Observatory Park this year. And so we'll see if we come up with anything at those parks. So, and then we give the information to LEAP, which is the Lake Erie Allegheny Partners. They're the ones that initiated that survey, so they're the ones that will get this data. In July, I do a public program for at the Union Chapel property, which is on 44, the little free speech chapel there. We own the property behind that, and one of the Eagle Scouts several years ago for his project did this big bat condo that holds thousands of bats. And so every year we do a survey where we go out to the site and I give people click counters, and as it gets dark, we click count the bats that we see fly out of the condo, and which it's fun to do, but I'll tell you, when it gets dark, it starts getting harder to see, and it's tougher to you know, see when as they're flying out. But we this past year purchased one of those thermal imaging scopes, which for this survey should help us out greatly when we do our bat count. So here's the results from the years that we've done the survey. So I participated in the survey that we did in 2011. And there were so many bats flying out of that condo, I could hardly keep up with the click counter. And when we were done, I think I had 800 some bats on my click counter, and my coworker had, you know, 900 or something on hers. And so we figured, being that this was a nursery colony for big brown and little brown bats, that there were probably close to 3,000 bats in the box. Then that nasty invasive disease called white nose syndrome people started noticing problems with bats in 2012. And so the year after, that number was down almost to half, and you can see what's happened since then. Now, the last couple years, there have been little rises in the population. We didn't do quite as well this year as we did the year before, but we'll see what we get this July when we do the count. And usually I do it over a 2-night period. I do it once with our NRM department, and then I'll do a public program with everybody, and then I average the two numbers. So anyway, so hopefully, over time, some of the bats are going to be able to develop a resistance to this disease, and you know, start bringing those numbers back up. At least that's the hope. But that's pretty devastating when it goes from, you know, almost 3,000 bats down to half the following year. So anyway, so if you're interested in the bat survey, keep your eye on the newsletter for when we do that. Usually happens in July. Here's an image through a thermal scope. My coworker a couple years ago had one, and so you can see the bats in the little, so anything that's in white shows heat. And so you can see the bats flying around in there, and there's one point where I think you can see one fly out of the hole off to the left. So I'm anxious. I can't wait till we do the survey again this year, because now that our department has a thermal scope, it's going to be fun to see how that works. So I think there's, let's see, did it come out yet? No, they're still flying around. Oh, there. It just so anyway. So if you're interested in that, check that out. And then the last thing that I'm involved with are the Bluebird volunteers, the volunteers that monitor the Bluebird boxes in our parks. We have 131 boxes over 9 parks. And so they're responsible for monitoring the box every week from really now until the end of August or September. It depends on how many broods the bluebirds or the tree swallows have. And so there's a whole bunch of data that gets recorded. And these are the results from all of the years that we have done the surveys. I'm happy to see that the trend line, at least for the tree swallows and the bluebirds, are slightly trending upwards, even though the past couple years numbers have been down a little bit. But gosh, so much of this depends on the weather. And when, we get those really early warm spells and they get going with their nests, and then what happens, we get cold days where, they can't find food, and the temperatures are maybe sometimes freezing. Those are really, really tough on the tree swallows and the bluebirds. So weather has a lot to do with the success of bluebirds nesting and their fledging success. So anyway, so with that, we have come to the end. And bonus points if anybody can tell, except Matt Valensic if he's watching, whose end this is. So anyway, Heather, I'll turn it back to you. And if there's questions or whatever, I'm happy to answer.
All righty, let me get
So
my little question
let me
thing.
stop. I'm going to stop sharing here.
That's fine.
Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe it's still up there. I don't know.
No, you're good.
Okay.
All right. The first question is, so the butt. Somebody said Virginia rail.
Ding, 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 ding.
All right, there we got a winner.
Yep. That was at Flooring Meadows.
All right. First question is, what time of day are the bird breeding surveys done?
So usually around 7 in the morning we start. Depends. Yeah, it depends. I mean, we've started some of them like 6:30. So somewhere in that ballpark.
And what time of year is the bat survey? Like, I guess, is it only in the summertime or?
Yeah, we do it. Traditionally, it's been July when we do it. It gives the bats a chance to find the box, do their reproductive thing. They're very slow reproducers. They only produce, like one young a year or something like that. And so that colony at Union Chapel has been technically a nursery colony. So that gives the bats time to sort of be established, have their babies, and then we do the survey.
All right. And do we know of an origin of where the white nose syndrome came from?
Yeah, it came from Europe, and it's a cold-loving fungus, and so cave areas are places where it thrives. Interesting that in Europe, bats have immunity to this. And so how did it get to the United States? Well, it probably came on somebody's clothing. They went in to explore a cave, and that's how it got spread. And of course, we don't have any resistance to that disease here. That's why it's been so devastating to our bat population.
And there's not a treatment for it.
No, but over this past year, I listened to a bat seminar, somebody who was doing research on bats, and they said that the more fat that bats are able to store, the higher their chance of survival is. Because the fungus brings them, it uses up their fat reserves faster than what they're normally used to, so they wake up during times when they can't get food. But they've discovered that bats that were able to put on more weight had a better chance of surviving that disease. So yeah, but still, we still have no cure for it. And even if we do, how is it going to be delivered? Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really tough considering not all bats are colonial.
Right.
I mean, I know the colonial bats are more at risk than the bats that
Right.
are like by
That don't
themselves.
do.
So,
Right.
but
Yeah, most of our bats are listed in Ohio now, unfortunately.
yeah, it is really sad. I like bats.
Me too. Yeah,
They
I
like
mean,
they eat a bunch of mosquitoes and
yeah, the ecosystem services they provide, I wish people would put monetary values on that. Maybe more people would, consider. Anyway,
alrighty. That's all the questions that I have right now. Don't see any more popping up. So if you do have any more questions that you think of, I usually send out a email
sure,
tomorrow. So you can always reply to the email and get back to me if you have a question. And I can either let Linda know or I might
sure.
be able to answer it.
Right. Yep.
Um, so I think that's it for tonight. Everyone, hopefully you enjoyed the presentation
Yeah, thanks everybody.
and have a good night.
Awesome. Take care.
All
See
right,
you
you
later.
too. Bye.
Bye.